I'm Joel Pollak, Republican nominee for Congress in the 9th District, and Taped with Rabbi Doug is next.
We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug on your TV tonight. But Daddy, I want to watch Monday Night Football. Forget about Monday Night Football. There's no other thing we're gonna watch on Monday but Rabbi Doug. Yeah, Rabbi Doug on TV tonight. We're gonna see Rabbi Doug. Oh, everybody talk about Doug.
Shalom and welcome to Taped with Rabbi Doug. Glad you could be with us today. My guest today is Joel Pollak, and he is candidate for Congress right here in Illinois. And Joel, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
You know, here on Taped with Rabbi Doug, we are very, very fortunate to be able to not only meet people throughout the community, politicians and movers and shakers, but sometimes Jewish politicians and movers and shakers, such as Joel Pollak, who is a Republican candidate for Congress, and you're running against Schakowsky.
That's right.
Jan Schakowsky.
9th District, and it runs from Evanston in the east all the way to Des Plaines in the west, and down into the city, West Rogers Park, Norwood Park, and northwest side of Chicago.
It's good you know your district.
Yeah.
And have you been, you know, the election is in when?
November 2nd.
November 2nd.
November 2nd, be certified.
It's the 2nd. I didn't know what day in November it was. It's November 2nd. So, and that's coming up. And have you been able to go into each community, each part of the neighborhood and talk to people already?
Yes, well, we went to each part of the district when we were gathering signatures for the primary at the end of last year. And right now we're moving through the entire district, not just me, myself, but the many hundreds of volunteers we have going door to door and canvassing the district, which is what you do when you want to find out where your voters are, where the undecided voters are, and move as you get closer to the election, doing that several times over and over again.
Now, for our viewers who have never met you, I just want to tell them a little bit about you. You were born in South Africa, grew up in Skokie, graduated from Niles North High School.
That's right.
Attended Harvard College and Harvard Law School, where you got your law degree, and you've written 2 books. What are the books on?
The first book is called The Casro's Affair, and it's on Jewish politics in the context of minority politics in South Africa. It actually was my master's thesis. I have a master's degree in Jewish studies from the University of Cape Town, and I wrote about minority politics in South Africa. And the context was debates over Israel and how that shed a light on South Africa in a democratic society. Remember that South Africa had only been a democracy since 1994. The second book is called Don't Tell Me Words Don't Matter, and it's about the 2008 presidential election, the most recent presidential election, and it's about the role of rhetoric and speeches in convincing the American people who should be their president. And I took the title of the book from a speech that Barack Obama gave, in which he repeated the refrain over and over again, "Don't tell me words don't matter," and Hillary Clinton actually pointed out he had borrowed that line from a speech by Deval Patrick. So even in saying, "Don't tell me words don't matter," he was sort of saying, well, words don't really matter. And I think that's the story of the 2008 election. There was a great deal of promise and many promises, and whether our current administration has lived up to them, I think we'll get a signal in November 2010.
Okay, very good. You confronted Barney Frank over the financial crisis. You exposed the partisan agenda behind the health care bill, and you know about solving problems and plan on doing that if you're in office. How are you going to create jobs? You know, one of the things that you're going around telling people is, if I'm elected, compared to Jan Schakowsky, you will see a lot of jobs created in this area, in the state, in this country. What can you do, or what do you have in mind to do to actually create jobs?
The first thing I'll do when I get to Congress is pass an investment tax credit that gives small businesses back 10% of everything they invest. That's not just a Republican idea, that's a Democratic idea. Also, President Kennedy did it when he was in office. That is the one silver bullet we've got, is to give people incentives to invest, incentives to save, incentives to create jobs. People know how to create jobs. Business people, employees, people know what drives our economy, and they're waiting to do it. However, people are holding back now because of all the things we've got in the pipeline, not just the health care bill, which just passed and became law, not just cap and trade, but all of the things that are out there that are job killers. And when we also know that taxes are about to go back up at the end of the year and are going to rise even more to fund all these new social programs and to pay off the ever-growing deficit, we also know that more and more businesses are going to be taxed, more and more households, families are going to be taxed, people are going to be taxed. If Jan Schakowsky has her way on their savings, she wants to take away the tax credit people get for saving in their IRAs and 401ks. Jan Schakowsky's approach is the government has to spend and tax and spend. And all that is going to do is reduce jobs, destroy businesses, and continue to keep us in this economic stagnation when we could be part of a recovery. There's a reason that the Chicago area has lost 250,000 jobs in the last decade or so, and that's because of this philosophy applied at a city level and a state level. Now it's being applied at the national level, and so what we have to do is get back to a philosophy and to economic strategies that build our industrial capacity and encourage investment, savings, and growth.
Very good, very good. Tell me, in your own words, without bashing, and I don't want any bashing certainly, but what are you going to do differently in Congress besides what you just talked about than Jan Schakowsky is doing? You know, if you get in there, you know, the pressure is on from the party. The party says we do this, we vote for the party. What are you going to stand up and say, I'm a little bit different, I'm going to do this?
Well, one area in which I've taken on the Republican establishment is on the issue of earmarks. There are many Republicans who want to hang on to the idea that they can use public funds to keep themselves in office, which is what a lot of Democrats are doing now as well. And I've said no to earmarks. We have to reform the entire budget process because this earmark process, the way it works right now, is just corrupt. And politicians use our tax dollars to try to reward supporters or pay this constituency off or that one in order to keep themselves in office. That's only one part of a bigger picture of fighting corruption in Washington. And without disparaging Ms. Schakowsky, she has not been a leader in the fight against corruption. And I have proposed new rule changes in the Ethics Committee that will make clear that the minority, not the majority, whether the minority is Democrat or Republican, the minority is allowed to bring corruption cases to the fore. One of the reasons that none of these cases ever move forward, the Rangel case, for example, lingered for years and still he hasn't really been punished, is that the majority controls the Ethics Committee, even though there's an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. The chairman's always from the majority party, so the speaker controls the committee. I want to change the rules so that the opposition has control and can take the initiative. They always have an incentive to find the corruption, and we need to make use of that, not discourage that.
How can someone like you come in and say, I want to change this, when nobody else is able to? Maybe I'm sure there are others who've had that thought before and not been able to. What is somebody who's new, who's a freshman coming in Congress, how is he able to do that?
I believe we'll have a Republican majority in Congress after 2010, but it'll be a Republican majority that knows it has to make amends with the American people, that it hasn't been so long since the American voters kicked out the Republican Party for failing to rein in spending and so on. And I think this new majority in Congress will be at great pains to show they can work with the opposition. And I think that this idea, among others that I've proposed, is one that will increase bipartisanship because the Republican Party will come in and immediately say, we want the opposition to be stronger constitutionally or as part of the structure of Congress. We are giving our political rivals the power to investigate us. And so I think it's a bipartisan gesture that will appeal to people on both sides. And if I can't get enough support among Republicans, I'll reach out across the aisle and get enough support for Democrats for a measure that will restore public faith in government.
Very nice, very nice. I love it. One of the things that, as you look at the financial market today and everything that's going on is the market is way down, gold is way up because it's something solid they can hold on to. Where is there going to be confidence again that's going to bring the market up and help the economy really grow? And what can Congress and what can a congressman or congresswoman do to help, forge that to move forward?
The first thing we have to do to restore confidence is to stop the wasteful government spending that goes on and on and on. And even when Congress says it has to pay for everything it spends, it continues to spend beyond that, up to $1 trillion in the last year alone. We have to cut spending that's wasteful. We have to get back to showing the world and showing investors that, hey, we have a commitment to fiscal conservatism, to fiscal responsibility. That will restore investor confidence in our economy. More broadly, though, the only real confidence that's going to be there for people is if we see job creation. When jobs start coming back, people will begin to have a renewed sense of confidence in their personal lives, in their household expenses, in their shopping choices, in housing, and so on. Jobs really are the bedrock of economic confidence. And until those jobs start coming back, we're not going to see America back on track. That's why I want to make job creation, the number one priority of Congress.
Very nice. Let us know a little bit more about Joel Pollak. Where did you pass your bar, and where have you worked in the law field as an attorney?
Well, when I was finishing law school, my ambition was actually to be a military attorney. So I decided to take the bar. You can take the bar anywhere, and I took it in California, actually, because it's the most difficult bar. And I did that, and then all this stuff came up with deciding to run for Congress. I was approached by people in the community, and they said, after my argument with Barney Frank, why don't you think about running for Congress? And I began to think about it and thought, okay, this is something to do. So after the bar exam, I was on a book tour for my second book, and then when I came back, I went to Jan Schakowsky's town hall meeting where I saw her suppressing questions through paid organizers that had been brought in. They actually repressed questions from people in the district, and I thought, this has got to stop. So that's when I decided to run for Congress. But the actual day job I had before I got into politics was working as a legal researcher at the Hudson Institute. And the issues specifically that I worked on were human rights issues in the United Nations, specifically dealing with the anti-Americanism and anti-Israel stuff going on in the UN. And I worked for Ann Bayevsky, and she and I stood up to that at the UN. And in general, in the media, we ran a website called Eye on the UN, which monitors the UN and gives information to people who want to respond to what's going on there.
Very nice. You're from a traditional family. Grew up, much of your life here in the Skokie area, in the Chicago area. What made you decide to come back to Chicago in the midst of all this? Was it the political aspirations?
No, well, this is home for me. It always has been. And I've traveled all over the world, but this has always been home. And I love this community. I was at a train station today, as I am every morning, greeting people, and right there on the platform was someone I'd gone to high school with and hadn't seen for 15 years. And a few minutes later, I saw someone from Zambia, a woman from Zambia, and I said, well, I happen to have been to Zambia. I went there in 2001 to see the solar eclipse that they had there. And so I felt like it was two sides of my world coming together, the home side in Skokie, Illinois, and at the same time the abroad side that had traveled and had all these experiences. But this has always been home to me. I love it here. It's a fantastically diverse community, a community with a lot to offer, and a community I think that has a very bright future. It's sad to see the empty stores and the homes that are abandoned or being foreclosed, and we really have to turn that around.
Let me ask you this now. Your political aspirations are jumping already into the government. You haven't really taken office in any local offices, county offices, or anything like that. And obviously, you can't run for president someday because you weren't born in the United States. Do you feel like if you get into Congress that you're going to be at a dead end there because you can't move from there? Or do you feel like Congress is something that you could do as a life career?
Well, I don't think anyone should look at Congress as a life career. I think that the best representatives are those who stay for a short while and then leave and move on and do something else. I think that I'd like to represent the district and to make some real changes in Washington and then to move on and do something. I've always enjoyed teaching. I could go into the practice of law. I could also open a business. My brother's just opened a restaurant. He lives in San Francisco. It's a very nice enterprise. There's so much to do, and I think that you can't look at politics as a permanent career. Certainly, I think too many people do, and they treat the seats as if they own them and forget who they work for. I think that there's a lot you can do even if you can't run for president one day. In fact, I think there's more you can do as a representative if you can't run for president, because it means your focus is always going to be your district. And I think it's a blessing, in fact, that I was born overseas, because A, I can really appreciate the freedoms and benefits of the United States. But B, it also means that in going into Congress and going into politics, I'll be focusing on the issues that really matter to the people who put me there.
Who are your heroes? Who are the people that you look at in politics over the years? You're a young guy, and certainly before your time and during your lifetime, there must be some political people, who are out there that you really look at and say, I admire that person, or that person is really a role model for me. Who are those people?
Well, let's start with contemporary people and move back. Someone I really admire is Paul Ryan. He's a young Republican who's the ranking member on the House Budget Committee. And
from where?
From Wisconsin. He's from southeast Wisconsin, and he has really been a leader in fighting for fiscal responsibility in Washington. And during the health care debate, for example, he asked very simple questions of the president that unfortunately President Obama could not answer. And Paul Ryan, of course, was correct. The numbers that were being thrown around were not correct. We had been misled, I think. And he did his job in a very meaningful way. He opposed the majority party in a respectful but very effective way, and he has created a new agenda for financial responsibility that I'd like to support when I go to Washington. There are aspects of it maybe I'd like to talk to him about, but in general, the approach he's taken I think is very good. Other people I admire, there are some Democrats I admire. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the great senator from New York, who was also the United States ambassador to the United Nations. And he really led the way in 1975 when the Zionism is Racism resolution came on. Moynihan made sure that the United States was very strongly against it. And I actually sat in the General Assembly last year and watched the debate on the Goldstone Report, and I thought to myself, if we had only had a Moynihan instead of the people we have today, who unfortunately I think are very committed public servants but are serving an agenda that is one of appeasement and not one of standing up for freedom, I think if only we had a Moynihan today, what a difference it could have made. And then looking back further in American history, I'm reading a biography right now of James Madison, who's my personal favorite founding father at the moment, because Madison's idea of our Constitution was one where there would be checks and balances between different sides of the government. And I think we've really moved away from that now. We see a White House that is determined to exert power over all sorts of things that are really outside of its constitutional authority. And we're moving away from Madison's vision. And I am enjoying learning more about Madison, and everything I've learned about him so far and everything I'd studied up to this point about him had really made him someone who I think all of us should admire and whose vision is really relevant today.
As a person who lives in the 9th District and has lived here for most of my life, it seems to me that it's very hard to step foot into a race where everyone in the 9th District knows the name Jan Schakowsky. She is a household name. Everyone knows her. People will probably get up and just vote for her because they always have, not even looking at the issues or who's running against her. In the Chicago area, obviously, she's a Democrat, so people will vote Democratic and they won't even care that somebody else has policies that possibly could agree more with their own thinking, and it just becomes automatic. How does someone like you step in and say, I think I can beat Jan Schakowsky, even though a lot of people are going to be voting for her? How do you get your name out there for the people who don't know who you are, so that's a possibility?
Well, there's only one way to get your name out there, and that's just hard work. You know, being at the train stations in the morning, walking around the neighborhoods in the evenings, and just going door to door, person to person, and making those contacts. She is a household name, but not every household think that's a good thing. Jan Schakowsky is the most left-wing member of Congress in either house, and that's not just me saying it, that's independent watchdog groups like GovTrack and National Journal. She is far, far to the left of the district, and I think one of the reasons people have voted for her is because they haven't felt that there was a strong enough or visible enough alternative, and that's what we're really providing this year. And I think what enables us to do what we do, and what enables me to believe I can win, is that we're presenting a choice to people, that for the first time people in the 9th District have a choice. They can choose to re-elect a representative who wants to spend more, who wants to keep enforcing this mandate of government over every aspect of our lives, who doesn't really have any ideas to create jobs, or we can choose a different path. We can choose the path of growth, of small business development, of job creation, of lower taxes. And I think people have been longing to make that choice for a long time, and I'm out there providing it for them, and I'm very glad to be doing it.
What about Joel Pollak versus Jan Schakowsky when it comes to Israel? Tell me about each of your visions of Israel, policy on Israel, and how you think that your vision is one that's more mainstream for the 9th District.
Well, I think our policy differences come in to the United States' approach to Israel. If we were running for a Knesset seat, maybe we could talk about our policies on Israel. But on Israel, I believe the number one priority of American policy must be Israeli security. Security from Iran and security from terror. Jan Schakowsky's thrust is different. She has sided with J Street, which is a group that, although I respect their right to have their opinion and so on, they have always blamed Israel first for any problem that comes up in the Middle East, and they believe that President Obama has to intervene, almost to impose a solution on Israelis and Palestinians. For a long time they opposed Iran sanctions. They've lost the bigger picture. And they've lost the bigger picture not just because they don't understand the threats to Israel. They've lost the bigger picture because they don't understand the threats to the United States. And I don't believe Jan Schakowsky does either. She has consistently opposed American military strength, even when it's needed. We know how the Second World War happened. The Second World War happened because America was not strong enough, was not engaged enough in the world in using its strength to prevent atrocities. I believe we're faced with a similar situation today. I believe that a secure Israel safe from terror is the number one priority. And unfortunately, the policy of the Obama administration is to drive a wedge between the United States and Israel, what Ambassador Michael Oren called a tectonic shift in relations, which neither the United States nor Israel can afford. And I just don't believe that Jan Schakowsky is alive enough to those challenges, is aware enough of that. And she is going along with an agenda that's being driven by the far left, which stipulates that Israel must make all sorts of concessions after concessions after concessions without anything in return. And that has weakened Israel, weakened the United States, and weakened the free world. And I just think it's wrong.
We are here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. I'm here with Joel Pollak, who's running for Congress for the 9th District on the Republican ticket. And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Once they've outgrown their toddler seat, they're still not ready for adult safety belts alone. 4'9" is the magic number. Until then, kids need a booster seat. Make sure your little pumpkin gets there safely. Visit boosterseat.gov.
Hi, I'm Carol Marine, and you're watching Taped with Rabbi Doug.
Ma'am, I have to ask you to move to the rear of the bus.
We shall not.
Rogers Park. Before you visit, go to morsehellhole.blogspot.com. morsehellhole.blogspot.com for information that Rogers Park community leaders don't want you to know. That's morsehellhole.blogspot.com.
I'm Senator Jeff Schoenberg, and you're watching Tape with Rabbi Doug.
Welcome back. We're here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. I'm here with Joel Pollak. He is running for Congress. And tell me what is unique about the 9th District. How many congressmen are there in Illinois?
We've got 19, I believe.
19.
And what makes the 9th District unique is its diversity. It's an amazing collection of people from all over the world. It's an amazing conglomeration of people from different economic backgrounds and different pursuits. And that's one of the things I really like about it. When the Barney Frank episode happened and there were Republicans in Illinois who said, hey, why don't you run for office? I said, great, I want to run in the 9th District. That's my home district, and I love it. And they said, why don't you run in a more traditionally Republican district? And I said, well, if I believe in these ideas, they have to be good for my district as well as any other district. In fact, they have to be especially important to a district that's been denied them for so long. Unfortunately, we've only had 2 representatives for the bulk of the last 60 years, and I don't think that's right either. I think that means our voices are taken for granted and are not listened to, and we have so many different ideas, so many things to contribute, and that's why I want to represent us in Washington.
Wonderful. If I gave you a minute to speak to the people out there, if you could, tell our viewers who are in the 9th District and able to, why they should vote for Joel Pollak.
I have a fundamental philosophical disagreement with my opponent. My opponent believes that her job is to represent Washington to the district, and my belief is the job of a representative is to represent the people to Washington. I want our district to succeed. I'm very troubled by what I've seen happening in our district with the high unemployment and people struggling to make ends meet. I know that we can be different. We once were. Not too long ago, this district was the economic powerhouse of the Chicago region. We can be that way again. We have the ideas, we have the will, we have the skills, and we have the resources. But the policies are getting in our way. And every policy passed by this Congress, whether it's the bailouts or the tax hikes or the healthcare reform that actually won't pay for itself or the new regulations coming in, everything is making it harder for us to create jobs. In fact, many of these new laws are job killers. This Congress has not put job creation first, and I will, because I know that the people of the 9th District are the people who can build the future of the 9th District best. We do need government's help for those of us who are less fortunate, who cannot help themselves, but we also need government to allow us to fulfill our dreams, to create the community that we have always enjoyed here and that we know we can enjoy for many generations to come. That's why I'm asking you for your vote in November, because I believe we can do it. I believe this district needs a fresh start.
One more question for you. That's wonderful, wonderful words. I think that as we all know, no matter who you talk to, they don't really think of the international crises that are going on right now. They really think about the banks failing, and they think about their own financial woes, and they think about the job problems that so many are having in our area. What's going to happen with all these banks failing? What can Congress do? What can a congressman do when they get into office to, help not only stop these failings, but how should they react to them when they do happen? Are we doing the right thing or not doing the right thing? And what is your opinion about that? Because I think that's really a main issue with everyone.
Well, there are aspects of the system that are actually working. We have the bankruptcy courts, we have the FDIC that comes in and helps wind down a bank and protects the depositors, protects the borrowers, protects businesses that are depending on their transactions through the bank. What we have to do is to build up the economy. It's the only way to prevent banks from going out of business. The margin of profit for many banks is actually very small, and the only way to do it is not with bailouts, but with jobs. There are many community banks that are failing because unemployment is so high, and bailouts are not the answer. A free market economy is based on the 3 R's, as I call them: risk, reward, and responsibility. And what we had for too long was we had all the reward, but without the responsibility. And unfortunately, there are some banks that made very bad investments, and they have to either be taken over by other banks or managed by the government in some way. But I don't believe the answer is more bailouts. The answer is a return to pro-growth policies that create jobs and create the prosperity in communities across the nation like this one that can sustain that broad range of community banks that we knew for so long.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want to wish you much success.
Thank you very much.
In your bid for Congress, and I want to thank you for being on the show, Joel Pollak, and we hope that you will remember to go out and vote on November 2nd, and we want to thank you for being with us. Remember, if you want to check out our website at www.tvrabbi.com, you can not only see our shows on the web, but you can also find out where we are airing in your community on TV. Also, if you want to send me or send Joel an email, I'll be happy to forward on to him. info@tvrabbi.com is the email address. Once again, I want to thank Joel Pollak and want to thank you for being with us, and hope to see you next time right here on Taped with Rabbi Doug. Shalom, everyone.
And I'm talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show. Well, he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need, you're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. And I'm talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug. Talking about Rabbi Doug on your TV show. Well, he's the rabbi for me. Anytime you need, you're gonna get married or you're gonna die. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug. Gonna see Rabbi Doug on the TV tonight.
This has been a Taped with Rabbi Doug production.